Is it just me or Diego Lopes got robbed this weekend? Perhaps you disagree, so comment below and why you think so. Every shot that Volkanovski threw got a huge pop. None of the shots that Lopes threw got a big pop. Each round was really close, so just that alone skewed the judges quite a bit, as well as the commentators. So even in the places where Volkanovski wasn't really landing his jabs, commentators were saying, nice jab, and the crowd was cheering for him. So I do believe the judges screwed this up and Diego Lopes got robbed. But let me know what you guys think. Let's go through the fight and see how it went, as well as take a look at the rest of the fights for what was a pretty good event. So let's get right to the main event: Volkanovski versus Lopes. Champ Volkanovski defending the title against Diego Lopes. Coming into this fight, there was a lot of discussions about Volk retiring if he loses the fight, and some fans were even saying that he may retire even if he wins the title, because it would be perfect atmosphere to go out on top. I didn't think that Volk would retire if he wins, although that would be nice in Australia and while being a champ. So coming out to retirement at the top, that'd be pretty spectacular. But I was pretty certain if he loses the fight in a devastating fashion that he would end it there, because being knocked out or finished by Diego Lopes, that would have been the end. A lot of fans as well disagreed with me, but that was my take. Coming in, I thought Diego is going to use his experience from the previous fight and use his jab more, be a bit more composed, don't overthrow too much, counter a little bit better, not just wait for Volk to throw the shots and initiate the action. And if it was my pick was that Diego Lopes is going to win the fight. How? That's debatable, perhaps by a finish, perhaps by decision. But I didn't think that Volkanovski would win this fight, and that was contrary to betting odds, which were for Volkanovski, and that was contrary to verdict fans' votes on verdict.com choosing which fighter is going to win. Most people chose that Volkanovski is going to win by decision. So going into this fight, I thought, if anything, the odds were pretty even. If you look at the keys to the victory, I thought it's going to be very simple setup. It's fight IQ versus youth. So fight IQ, that Volkanovski delivered that in this fight. It was really straightforward. He knew exactly when to punch, when to back out, when to cause action, and put Lopes into all sorts of trouble. Though Lopes did a lot of leg kicks in the beginning and caused a little bit of damage to Volkanovski, but not enough. And going through the fight, the IQ part of the fight game was obviously what took over, even from the spectator side. So while I was believing at any given moment that Diego had a chance to be ahead in all the rounds, especially in the knockdown and in some of the harder punches, at the same time, Diego's youth in this game was probably one of the deciding factors why the judges didn't give the fight to him in any way or in any round. Mainly because what I was seeing there, even in the situation where Diego Lopes got hit twice and he just kind of shrugged it off as if it was nothing and smiled at the end, then he got hit with the third shot there with an elbow, and then he had a huge smile, which then everyone knew, okay, he got tagged in all of these three shots as well, even if in reality he wasn't. There was no reason for him to get out of his composure and do anything else. Then, is it a robbery? Let's get to the main question here. Was it really a robbery? I believe that the home court advantage was really too big for Volkanovski in order for the fight to go to the decision. Diego Lopes needed a finish in order to have a convincing victory. Otherwise, they're just very unlikely. Again, Diego Lopes can land 10 hard shots in the round. 2 or 3 of Volkanovski shots will take the round somehow, even though the whole fight, at least 70% of the fight, Volkanovski was getting pushed quite a bit by Lopes, and Lopes didn't give any ground to him in that sense at all. So was it actual robbery? You can debate it. I can see how people would think that it was 4-1, but 5-0, really, there's no way it was 5-0. That's a different fight. All 5 rounds to Volk. That's either because it's purely in Australia or the judges just simply saw something else, or I was watching the fight sick and I didn't know what I was watching, but I'm pretty certain I can tell the difference between Diego and Alex quite easily, even while being sick. And I'm a fan of both, so I didn't really have preference, but I thought Diego would come out on top, and it seemed to me that that's what was happening in the rounds, even though all of them were extremely close. So perhaps a robbery, perhaps not. In my opinion, the fight could have gone to Diego Lopes, and then to everyone's excitement, we would have gotten a third fight between them. Now, if we look at the rounds themselves, I thought that Volk's fight IQ took over the first round. He got the takedown as well, just to cap it off. Although he was being pressured the whole fight, besides that mistake that Lopes has made of smiling after getting hit and probably costing him the round, I thought it was a pretty good round for Lopes too, mainly because not every fighter can push Volkanovski around for the whole round. That doesn't happen. But I did give it to Volk. That was pretty obvious. Now, second round, it was pretty even fight. Diego started countering pretty well. Almost none of the exchanges led to just one-sided shots. There was a little bit more jabs thrown on both sides as well. So things started to open up. Diego was waiting for his shot, and I felt that Diego was also blocking most of the shots taken by Volkanovski. So it didn't look like he got that much damage. The gave me the fight or this round to Diego was he did cut him. So that's pretty important because that's visible damage. Although, if you're someone like Dan Hooker and you don't get cut ever or barely, then perhaps that's not that big of a deal. But the cut was there and it bothered Volk as well. And then takedown also solidified that, just like it did for Volkanovski in the first round. So just like I gave the first round to Volkanovski because of it, for the same reason I gave it to Diego in the second round, even though you could argue that Volkanovski was landing better shots and at least harder shots once he did. But I thought Lopes may have been landing a bit weaker shots versus harder shots of Volkanovski. The actual punctuating shots were harder from Diego Lopes, and at least Volk showed it, and that got taken down as well. So it's 1-1 in my book on that. Now, third round, it was a close round. They had some exchanges, both pressured quite a bit. But, and this is probably where my biggest disagreement will come in with everyone, was that knockdown is creating way more damage to Volkanovski than a shot that Volkanovski gives to Lopes, that Lopes just eats it. Lopes has a chin. You can't just knock him out that easily. So the impact is not as big. You can land 3 shots on Lopes and he still stands. Like, he may back off because you are getting hit with a strong shot, but that's about it. Volk got dropped by right hook coming in. I thought that was obvious. If we're looking at what's the fight ender, what was the closest to end the fight in that specific round, it wasn't Volk's shots. It was Diego Lopes knocking him down. What happens after you get knocked down? Well, in most situations, either you get TKO'd or you get finished pretty quickly, or you get submitted right after. And yes, Volk stood up, but he was for a second going limp. So for me, it was a round giver. So Lopes won that round, and I had it 2-1 going into the fourth round. Fourth round, both had a lot of energy, a lot of good exchanges. I thought that Volk was sort of leading the charge, showing more energy, and Lopes was just catching up as much as he could, was again waiting for the opportunities to strike rather than him creating it. I believe it was just one opportunity that Diego Lopes decided to actually strike by himself. So there was that opportunity. And so I gave the round to Volkanovski there, 2-2 going into the fifth. Then in my opinion, I don't know what happened in the fifth round. How do you give it that easily to Volkanovski? This is staggering. Diego Lopes was closer to finishing the fight again. He was attempting submissions all the time. So if you're attempting submissions all the time, and it wasn't Volkanovski that had to get out of there in any way, it wasn't Volkanovski that was causing the damage in there in any way. He was just trying to survive, trying not to get armbarred, triangled, kimured, if you can say that. So he was going for everything. And he had the guy on his back too, or really close. For the most part, I thought that Diego was dominating that round. And at the end, yes, once Volk was on top with 40 seconds left or so, he threw some shots, but it didn't do any real damage to him. There was a lot of significant strikes written down for him, but it wasn't that much. It wasn't something that should weigh the fight towards one side or the other if you just ignore the rest of the round, which I thought Diego was winning. So I did give it to Diego Lopes, and in my opinion, it was 3-2, Diego Lopes winning the title and becoming a champ. That's how I see that it was a robbery. Again, I am a fan of Volk, so I could see it from his lens. You could say it was 4-1 Volkanovski. If you give all these close rounds to Volk, you can't give 5. There's no way. But 4-1, if you really, every edge you give to Volk because you like him and you hear the pop from the crowd, that's the way you judge the fights. Fair enough. That happens a lot and it's a part of UFC. I just didn't think so. And I tried to ignore all the loud noises. So you may want to rewatch the fight with no voices at all and then see how you scored a fight, who caused more damage, who was more aggressive in certain points. When Volk came in, who was countering more, who was doing more damage at the end. Because I thought that just as Volk gave, he also ate. So that's how I see. I thought Diego Lopes won the fight for all these reasons. Let's take a look at the verdict scoring and how the fans gave the rounds to either Diego Lopes or Volkanovski. So you can see my prediction was a fourth round knockout by Diego Lopes. That didn't happen. And you can see my scorecard. That was pretty, as I mentioned, first round Volk, 2 rounds to Lopes, 4 to Volk, 5 to Volkanovski. I had it for 8-47. Lopes winning the fight. If you look at the verdict scorecards, well, I guess all of you watching are Volk's fans in one way or another. So this justifies exactly what you were expecting and what you were seeing. First round clear to Volk, so I'm in agreement there. I think second round was way closer, and you can see that it wasn't that big of a difference even through anyone watching the fight. Although I would say it was closer than that, and I thought Lopes took it, but not according to the fans. Third round, fans give it to Volk. I disagree completely on that. That makes no sense. You get a knockdown, you win the round. That's what it is. The only situation is if you're getting smashed for 4 minutes and then someone gets a knockdown, that's kind of like this. Okay, maybe, but not when it's pretty even. And Volk didn't cause that much more damage in any way. So not even close. Fourth round, again, that's even more one-sided according to verdict scorecards. And fifth round, same. Not what I was seeing. I don't think submission attempts should be written off in that type of way. That doesn't really help anyone in any way. So we should. Next up to look at is the fight statistics. So total strikes versus significant strikes, and each round can be analyzed individually. Total strikes, Volkanovski won and higher accuracy. So it's fair enough. I don't have much to say about it. Takedowns 2-2. So Lopes was more efficient in taking Lopes down, but they got the same amount of takedowns. That's fair enough. Now, submission attempts, you can see UFC site is completely off with this. The submission attempts 1 versus 0 on the Diego Lopes side. I thought there was a lot of submission attempts. Just the fifth round had probably 3, 4, maybe 5 submission attempts that were pretty close. If you have your hand on someone's neck in that type of way, that is close enough to a submission attempt. And if someone has to remove it, then there may have been a submission attempt. That's not exactly how UFC counts it, but still, it was not 0. Like, no one can't watch this fight and say there was 0 submission attempts. But anyway, that's how the strikes were. And then we have significant strikes, 98 versus 70. Again, Volk winning that part overall, to where I don't think that significant strikes are all can be equated. For example, if in the fifth round there was not much that Alex was landing, but somehow he got 21 significant strikes or so that evens out the rest of the fight. Because a little shot here and there on the ground is treated as significant strike, but it isn't. It really isn't. If you trained, you know it's not a big deal. It's annoying, but it's not significantly annoying. It's not something that sometimes the fighters don't even move because it's not that big of a deal. It's more, so I wouldn't even call that significant. So if you look at the first round, so 17 versus 12, 12 versus 12 significant strikes, that part comes in to what I'm talking about, to where I think that first round, even though it went to Volkanovski, it was way closer. And I agree, it went to Volkanovski. That's how it should have been. But it was way closer. It wasn't one-way street. It wasn't when you finish the round, you just give it to Volk and that's it. You actually had to consider it because the strikes that were landing, they did have different impact and they were way closer to one another. So who cares if you do a little jab that touched the guy a few times? It doesn't really matter if the other guy's any shot is stronger than yours and give you bigger impact. So in that sense, still fair enough. Now, if we look at the second round, total strikes 20 versus 19, 19 versus 16. Again, very close round to where nobody gave it to Lopes, right? So even though the round was really close, that's exactly what I was seeing. So sometimes stats seem to be on, sometimes they seem to be pretty accurate. I would say that statistically speaking, this was a close fight. And with the shots landed, Diego Lopes was doing more damage in them and Volk was having way more reactions. So take it or leave it. Round 3, 21 total strikes versus 17, 21 versus 17, significant strikes. So you have the same amount of strikes. You don't have really any takedowns in the round. You get knocked down, and still, according to most of the fans on verdict and the judges, some judges still give him a round, and even the commentators were saying that, oh yeah, Volk won the third round. I don't see how that happens. Again, they were watching a different fight. The way what I'm seeing here is very accurate to what was happening to me when I was watching the fight. So third round, I thought that was Lopes. And that's what the stats say as well. We got another one. Round 4, both verdict and the decision. Everyone gave the fourth round to Volk, including myself. But when you look at the significant strikes, it's not that big of a difference, right? It's pretty close. It's 25 versus 22. It's every shot that Lopes landed made Volk feel something. It wasn't nothing. So I don't think it was that straight. But even then, I gave it to Volk as well, but it was way closer than what it looks like from both decision and the verdict scores. Now, round 5, of course, it looks like it's a one-way street, 20 total strikes versus 4, 2 takedowns on Volk. Submission attempts, they gave it to Volk, but not to Lopes. That seems kind of funny. Let me put you in an armbar position, and you tell me if that's a submission attempt. Even when you're trying to get your arm out with your few centimeters of it getting broken. Same in Kimura setup. Tell me that's not a submission attempt when you have to roll over yourself to get out of it. It's a problem. That's how it gets judged. And then Volk landed some significant strikes at the very end and won the round according to everyone. I disagree completely with this. This makes no sense. So I give the fight to Lopes, and as I'm going through and seeing stats, that's even more important to emphasize. So what's next? What's next for Volk? What's next for Diego? Let's have a look at the rankings, because the only thing that's seriously left to look at is perhaps Evloev if he recovers, and perhaps Lerone Murphy. There's no one else that's worth a title shot in this division, and then you can set up anyone you want to with Diego Lopes. He's probably gonna beat everyone, so I don't think it's a big deal. We'll just see where this division heads. Perhaps the solution will be to put Volkanovski and Tsarukyan into the White House if nothing else plays out. So who knows? But I think it becomes relatively boring division with those two playing out like that. So I would almost prefer to see a third fight between them. So Dan Hooker versus Benoît Saint-Denis. Coming in, I thought that Dan Hooker is gonna lose this fight. Probably first round knockout. Dan Hooker wanted to brawl. We can see that in the press conference, and that's just how he fights. And those brawls don't always come as a victory to him. And I thought Benoît Saint-Denis has way more power, and in those brawls, you can actually just finish Dan Hooker. If anything, a few takedowns and it would get it done. So as I was going into the fight and looking at who could actually win it, there was no doubt in my head that Benoît Saint-Denis takes it. The only question mark was sometimes he makes mistakes, he does get tagged, and he does get tired. So that was the only reason why the odds weren't extremely favorable to Saint-Denis, although he was the favorite to win the fight. So going into the fight, strongly supporting Benoît Saint-Denis' victory, and I thought it's going to be a way easier fight than it really was. So what are my thoughts on the whole fight? Well, Dan Hooker surprised us. Maybe he didn't surprise Australians, but did surprise the rest of the audience, because we didn't expect him to defend takedowns as well and to get out of them so quickly. And he was tagging Benoît Saint-Denis pretty badly at this whole first round. While Dan Hooker lost the round, in reality, the fight was really close, and uh, the crowd was cheering for Dan Hooker with every little inch of victory that he was getting in those exchanges, and just not getting taken down and being able to get up did a lot to him. So the fight did go past the first round, which I didn't see coming. I thought Dan Hooker is going to lose in the first round by knockout. Most people on verdict scores predicted that he's going to get submitted in the second round. So that's not exactly how it went. First round, Dan Hooker looked exhausted. He ate a lot of elbows, but at the same time, it looked like things could actually work out for him. So that was a pretty interesting and exciting first round. Second round, more takedowns from Benoît Saint-Denis. He looked like he was tired, but in those exchanges where Dan Hooker typically shines, where there is a brawl and there is a retreat from the opponent, even Michael Chandler and others, when there is a retreat, typically Dan Hooker capitalizes on it and he doesn't get a big return from those big guys, at least thickness wise, because Dan Hooker is taller, of course. But typically those guys retreat, and we have ourselves an interesting fight that didn't really happen there. So even though Benoît Saint-Denis was getting tagged, he was also returning some shots. So he was taking some, getting some, and taking some again, and returning at the end. So it didn't go as planned, although for sure, as the fight went through, Dan's stock was raising quite a bit. So in the end, he did get taken down and he did get beaten up, and TKO finished in the second round. Benoît Saint-Denis wins. Pretty exciting fight, quick one. Nothing to dig that much further into. It was as most people expected, minus the submission, which the only surprise was that Saint-Denis didn't get it. So that was actually pretty weird, because in many cases, he basically had full mount and could do whatever he wanted to. And the side chokes and all he needed was to get his leg out. And once he kind of did, Dan Hooker still made himself survive. So he had pretty good defense, training with Craig Jones. So that perhaps makes more sense. But his defense was pretty solid, and surprising that he didn't tap out. Well, props to him on that. Overall, I think Dan Hooker's stock rose quite a bit. You can basically set him up for Michael Chandler again if you want to. So you can just let them brawl out. It's a fun fight. Although, as I've seen mentioned in some commenters, it's expensive to get those two guys and then build one of them up again. And they're both on the older end. That being said, it would be an exciting fight, right? Who else you gonna put together? You're gonna keep Chandler and Hooker for gatekeeping the division? Maybe. What's next for Benoît Saint-Denis? Well, that's hard to say, but Arman Sarukian would probably make sense. That was my first idea even before he asked about it. I think that fight would make quite a bit of sense to do. I don't necessarily think it's gonna happen, but if we have a look at the rankings here and at the lightweight division, who do you want him to fight? He's number 5 already. Do you want Patty with him? That could be an interesting fight too, to be honest. They both lost their fights. There's no... Do you want to put Ruffy and... Which we're going to talk about later. Do you want to put Ruffy and Benoît Saint-Denis, perhaps? Do you want him to fight Max Holloway or Charles Oliveira? I don't think so, although those two are fighting it out. So next. So it is a possibility that they could put Benoît Saint-Denis and Charles Oliveira or Max Holloway. And if I had to guess, Max Holloway it is. So anything goes. So that is pretty fair. Now, if we look at keys to the victory, grappling versus striking, that was obvious one. So Saint-Denis, and I would put power in there too, because Saint-Denis just has more power, even though Dan Hooker is a better striker. But it prevailed. So grappling prevailed at the end. Pressure versus heart, you could also see it takes a lot for people in the UFC to get to the point where they have high enough skill and the heart matches to where they can actually use it. So sometimes the heart is there, but they just don't have the skill to get out of anything or fight back or counter. So even though they're half dead, the skill is just not there to put them through and gain a lot of fans. Dan Hooker, fan favorite, just by that. The heart was there, so his heart basically matched the skills. And that's why this fight went as good as it did for him, even though he lost. And that's not what he expected, but his stock rose quite a bit because he is entertaining, and that's that will always matter quite a lot. So there's nothing to discuss there. First round, then Saint-Denis win, although it wasn't as bad, and then Hooker did well, but it was nothing there to be discussed. And as we discussed before, of course, Sorokin could be next, but you can set him up with the winner of Charles Oliveira and Max Holloway. That would also be an interesting matchup, looking at all that. So yeah, on to the next one. Maurício Ruffy versus Rafael Fiziev. That was a great matchup. Before heading into this fight, I thought Fiziev is gonna edge him just a bit because he's way more diverse. He takes people down, so there's a pressure point there. You can't just strike with him and expect that that's what's gonna happen through the whole fight. He actually wants to go for takedowns, sometimes more, sometimes less, depends on the opponent. But just the fact that he forces you to think about the takedowns is already giving him a little edge. And considering Ruffy lost his previous fight, and so did Fiziev to just engage a couple of times. Despite that, I thought going in that Fiziev should be able to take the victory, perhaps by a finish in second, third round, perhaps first, because Ruffy is hittable too. So that was my prediction initially. As the ride, it was pretty much as expected. Fiziev was pushing Ruffy back. He didn't really have anything for him besides single shots. He was always at the back of the cage, Ruffy that is, and Fiziev was leg kicking him pretty badly. It didn't look that it's going his way at all, and he didn't really have any returns because occasional singles between jabs and right hands, and he was basically being pushed around quite a bit with some hits here and there. But I thought it was clear that the first round went to Fiziev, and we didn't really see much out of Ruffy at all. And perhaps Fiziev activity stopped at the end of the round too. What Fiziev did well in that round was he was mixing things up. He was throwing leg kicks, body kicks, jabs, crosses, hooks. He was basically giving him everything and going on full pressure. Didn't look that tired at all. So that seemed promising to him. As the round began, Ruffy did look a bit more active. So some of the shots landed a little bit more accurately, but most of them were blocked. So even though it looked sometimes like it was a hit, it was clear that Fiziev blocked it with his hand. There was a head kick here and there, then also was partially blocked, which, well, if you've been kicked, you know it hurts anyway, but this happens all the time. So still, the shot got him blocked, and for the most part, Ruffy was just throwing one shot at a time. It was precise, but it was hitting Fiziev's gloves. So I thought if that's how the fight is going to go, he's just going to lose. And again, he was being pressured back the whole fight. It was the same with when he was fighting Bobby Green in MSG. That was the only fight that got a lot of ovations in MSG at the time because of the spinning heel kick to the head of Bobby Green. That setup kind of looked familiar, but still he was being pressured too much with nothing in really return besides occasional jabs. And then Ruffy did started jabbing quite a bit more too. So there was something to it, but it didn't look like anything was really happening from just outsider's perspective. Although seemingly now seems like Ruffy was closing in just tiny bit and getting more and more accurate. Still, a lot of the single shots that he threw, it was hitting Fiziev's glove. So that's not the biggest issue in the fight, to be honest. And it didn't look like we can feel the knockout coming, or it's a Topuria type of pressure, just on the defensive end. It didn't feel like this at all. So that was pretty unexpected when one of the right hands landed and Fiziev got knocked down. And what Ruffy did and the situation in that round was pretty interesting because he was getting hit quite a bit, and he was always walking backwards. So that takes a lot of energy, but it did look like he had a lot of energy left. So throwing those singles didn't take a lot of his energy out. So the moment he knocked down Fiziev, he was all over him, putting blasts on him and trying to finish the fight. Fiziev tried to stand up and then back down again, and then the fight got stopped. So props to Ruffy. He proved me wrong. He proved a lot of people wrong. Nobody knew how he's going to recover from his first loss in the UFC, or the most recent one. So he did well, and of course, he was extremely emotional after his fight, but it also shows the strength of his character and that he has what it takes to obviously be in the UFC and put up some really exciting fights, even if it doesn't look like that's how it was going to go. If anything, it looked the opposite for the most part. So props to him for doing that. And it came down to pressure. Is Fiziev pressure going to be enough to win him the fight, or the precision of Ruffy is going to take that over? So that's exactly what happened. One precise shot and Fiziev got taken out. He had wars with Gaethje. So that's also another thing to consider. He could be stopped, even though with Gaethje it was different fight. So he ate a lot of shots. His chin is pretty solid this time. He didn't get knocked out, but it didn't hold up. The precision, the corner type of style of shot just was pretty much enough to get it done. Pretty exciting fight. Well done to, well, for 1.5 rounds, well done to Fiziev too. He got caught. That's what it is. If I was him, perhaps I would even write it down to being caught, because it wasn't much of anything that he was doing wrong or anything that, oh, now he has to stop. He cannot do this. He cannot do that. He was doing all the right things, trying to get it takedown or at least a clinch, hitting all the body parts. He was throwing a lot of feints, which Ruffy wasn't doing for the first round. So that was pretty good too. So he was doing all the right things. If you have a checklist of right things to do, Fiziev did it all and still got almost knocked out or, well, TKO'd. So it is what it is. What's next for Ruffy? Perhaps we set him up, we as in UFC, sets him up with Benoît Saint-Denis. That could be a good matchup. Else, perhaps you want to put him with the Mateusz Gamrot too, or Paddy. That would be an exciting fight. I would put him with Paddy if I get to choose. They're both exciting fighters. They both can strike. They both can do great. So that would be a pretty interesting fight. There's no reason for Ruffy to fight anyone below him at all, unless they really want to slow walk him to perhaps him fighting Dan Hooker. That would be an interesting fight as well. Otherwise, it's not really looking down. It's not really worth it for him. So it's only if it's a short notice and a good payday for Ruffy that I believe he should take any other fight than some of these guys. Now, what's next for Fiziev? He's now number 11, and we have Michael Chandler. We have up-and-coming fighters, Manuel Torres, Fares Ziam. So what's next for Fiziev? That's a bit harder to say, but you may want to consider putting him together with Beneil Dariush or Mateusz Gamrot as well. That would be a quite interesting fight. But I would see him and Beneil Dariush fighting it out. As long as Beneil doesn't retire, that could be a good fight, and Fiziev could build himself up over time. He's a good fighter. He's an exciting fighter. He has that Viking style, even though he's not from Scandinavia or anything like that. But he has the entertainment part of him. So I actually do look forward to watching his fights. And too bad the last 3 didn't go well for him. Now, Tuivasa versus Tallison Teixeira. Another great fight. Pretty exciting from the very beginning to the end. No one could have really expected how it's going to go. In this one, most people chose Teixeira to win and by a knockout. Same with me going in. I thought first round or second round knockout by Teixeira would be pretty obvious. As the fight started, it started from Tai throwing a few solid shots. And one thing that was pretty obvious with Teixeira is that he is going to have grappling advantage. It just wasn't obvious when he's going to use it, because he also has that Cyril Gane type of look to him, not necessarily the way he fights, but he's kind of similarly built. So you would expect him to, being a way taller fighter, to use that advantage in there as well. And Tai, of course, was supposed to come in, to be able to even hit him. So as the first round started, we also saw right away that Teixeira wants to grapple and Tai wanted to defend the hell out of it. Then he got taken down and stayed there for a bit, perhaps a bit too long, but he managed to get up. And then that's where all the fun began, because then the crowd got behind him. Anytime you watch Tai fight, anytime he does anything that's less expected of him, like getting up easier than expected, just showing the fight spirit, he always gains fans anytime he fights just because of that. And obviously the fight increased in intensity after he was able to get up a couple of times. But that being said, Teixeira being a jiu-jitsu champion 3 or 4 times, he managed to take him down again and keep him on the ground, although he didn't get any submission. So, and no TKO either, even though it looked like he could have brought some elbows down as well, but that didn't happen. So first round, Teixeira. Second round, same story, but Teixeira looked like he was losing a bit of more energy because it's hard to tie Tuivasa down to begin with and then keep him down too. And they're both heavyweights, so they run out of energy pretty quickly, especially with those massive and massive resistance and all of them being strong. So Teixeira took him down again, and then it was basically round one was the same as round two, although Tai was being a bit more successful in getting up and getting out and try to keep it try to keep the fight standing. Where Teixeira also showed some kicks, some body kicks that hurt Tai. It was obvious there, but at the same time, looks like they both were pretty low on energy, quite relatively visibly. Now, so second round went straight to Teixeira too, so that's what it is. Third round, that's where Ty's heart took over, and that's where my take is. It was fight IQ versus heart because Teixeira had nothing left in his tank. Ty looked exhausted from the second round alone. At the end of the first round, he looked exhausted too. So, and we've just so used to seeing him, and we're used to seeing him all red and wrinkled up and kind of exhausted, walking around and with hands down and just breathing. So when we see Ty doing this, we don't really care about it. We're just kind of that's just how he is. Just a matter of whether he's gonna catch a body or not. And then now on the other hand, Teixeira in the third round, he was exhausted and he showed it. He literally looked like he didn't really want to be there. Just decided to walk away and looked like he's not even in the fight. So he was done and he was showing it versus Ty was done, but he wasn't showing it. So Ty used that opportunity to rest and clinch him up and try to get some damage done in order to win the round and perhaps catch him. But at the end, I didn't have enough energy or power left to do that. So quite an easy round for Ty because Teixeira had nothing in him and Ty used all his heart in order to get that round and get closer. So Teixeira 2-1 wins a decision. Not extremely impressive win. He just showed the fight IQ. I thought he did all the right things. He was trying to take him down and keep him there. It wasn't easy. And he kept on repeating that. He also was throwing some leg kicks and body shots, which we know from Cyril Gane and other fights that Ty had. That Ty gets exhausted quickly, and those shots kill him pretty badly. So he was doing all the right things through 2 rounds, although he was getting tired, maybe a bit more than I would expect out of him. So did all the right things and he won the fight, and he didn't try to do too much stuff in the third round. He didn't take any risks, just tried to make sure he doesn't get caught, because one shot from Ty when you're exhausted and you wake up thinking what happened 3 minutes ago, and or you try to continue fighting while your coaches remind you that the fight is done. So I don't think the share of stock rose quite a bit. It was expected victory and he had to get that done. He did all of the right things, but him running out of gas after 2 rounds is quite a big problem. On the other hand, did Ty's stock went down? Not really. If anything, he gained more fans just because of his heart and the way he fights. And honestly, do we care? Do we care if Tuivasa loses 5 more in a row? Nobody cares. We want to see him fight all the time. He's an entertaining fighter. No matter which round it is, we know he just needs one shot to take somebody out, and we're going to have a great moment in the event, highlight reel for sure. Even though he has many losses in a row now, I think his stock either stayed the same or rose a bit because everyone wants to see him fight. So that is clear. So what's next for Teixeira is he's ranked number 11 now, so above Ty, of course, who dropped down to number 15 spot in the rankings. With all that being said, perhaps Teixeira and Derek Lewis would be another one. So it could be a step up for Teixeira. See if he can handle another big shot guy and finish him. Although with the last performance of Derek Lewis versus Valdo Costa, we may not want to do that. Otherwise, we're looking at Marcin Tybura. Would be a pretty good matchup for Teixeira. They both can wrestle, so that may cancel each other out, and we may see more striking from them. They are both not really known now for their gas tank, so That would be a pretty interesting fight to watch. And I would probably not go that much higher than these guys because I don't think it was impressive performance from Teixeira. He just did most of the right things that he needed to do. Then we have Tuivasa. So Tuivasa, perhaps even unranked opponent would be fine for him. It's not a big deal if he fights some of the guys above him, like McParkin or Walter Walker, and those would be great fights. But we can also give him some young blood and let him fight it out, or let him defend the rankings and stay in there so he gets his. Some people were mentioning that he was also getting really fat in the off season, and anytime they would show him in the events, there was people mentioning that he was like extremely fat, so he had to diet down a lot to even reach the heavyweight limit, which is typically, well, that shouldn't be a problem, but suddenly it is. So Ty needs to watch over that. Salchild versus Malarkey. Everyone expected a first round knockout. That's not exactly what happened, but great fight to start the event. It was pretty important to get it done like this. And of course, Paramount deal is there. So those type of fights on the main card is something that for sure keeps the Paramount guys happy. So Salchild was really impressive from the very beginning, trying to take Malarkey down. Malarkey was as impressive. He got up instantly and took Salchild down, and then the roles got reversed again until uh, Salchild got a finish. So he submitted Malarkey. That was a pretty quick fight, pretty well executed from both ends. Malarkey, of course, played into Salchild's game. He did the same thing as he was trying to get done on him. That didn't really work out for him, but it did look. You can't blame Malarkey for fighting the way he did. He was getting successful with the stuff that he was doing, so that is totally fair. It's just that Salchild is just way too good for Malarkey. That's all there was, and this fight has proved it. So impressive fourth win in a row for Salchild, and it's very interesting to look into who's next for him in the lightweight division. If we look at the lightweight division, you want to get him a ranked guy. He has 4 victories in a row. He's beaten good enough opponents that were not ranked. So I'm not a fan of waiting until the guy is 50 years old to give him chances, or giving it years and so on, because you don't really know your level until you start to fight someone ranked. So unless he himself feels that he cannot fight someone ranked, he should be pushing for it, because there you'll see your level. When you're fighting someone who's not ranked, they could be anywhere in the real ranking, in the maybe 50th position or 100th in the UFC, and you're beating them and you're on top of the world and you're getting exposure and you're happy. But the difference between unranked fighters and ranked fighters is typically pretty big. So after winning 4, I think he deserves a ranked opponent, and that could be anyone from even Fiziev or Dariush, Michael Chandler, Torres, or ZM. You could even put him with Renata Moicano, which I don't think that's necessarily, he's not going to get that because it's top 10. But that could be an interesting fight too. If he managed to take Moicano's ranking in there, that would be a quick rise up. The guy is entertaining, has the looks for it. He can finish people, he can submit people, so you can do everything, and he can take them down. So pretty interesting to shake up a lightweight division a little bit and put some new blood in there. So I would look at any of these fights for him. So this wraps up the UFC 325 talk and analysis. Congrats to all the fighters for winning their fights. There's still a lot of discussion left on was Diego Lopes that much worse than Volkanovski? And we're going to leave that to some other discussions out there. But the event was pretty good. The main card delivered as expected. Good fights with a few surprises here and there. Fan favorites showed up. No one quit midway through. No nonsense compared to the previous event. Derek Lewis just deciding to go home. So it was pretty good event. I would say it's at least 8 out of 10, perhaps 8.5 out of 10. Now, one thing that I was extremely interested to look into is fighters versus retirement. There's been a lot of discussions going on. Will Volkanovski retire if he loses? Some of it was created by the media and the fans and so on, but some of it was created by him as well. When he had the losses to Makhachev, he did mention a few times that he may retire. So that already gives a vibe that you don't want to have. You don't want a fighter going in to a title fight or any fight, to be honest, talking about retirement. Like if you're really old and you're Glover Teixeira or whoever, perhaps, or Dustin Poirier, even then it's annoying when the fighter is at such a high level and talks about retirement. I'd rather it be a surprise, to be honest, rather than every second fight mentioning, oh yeah, perhaps this is my last fight. So I'm not too happy to see fighters talk about retirement at all. And I'm generally biased towards that. That if we talk about retirement, this isn't basketball, this isn't football, this isn't a game. When in fighting, you're gonna get damaged. The moment you cannot just focus on the fight itself, that you want to be your best self in order to increase your ranking, get a better ranking, get a better payday, or you want to be a champion. The moment you don't focus on just that, on getting better and in order to achieve the top of the division and the top of basically the top of the chain. So the moment you start thinking, it's like, yeah, I could maybe win a few fights. And if I do, maybe I'll get a title shot. And if I do, maybe I'll win the title. Oh yeah. And maybe I will retire after one of these fights that I just mentioned. How does that feel like? It so undermines the sport itself. In basketball, you can be LeBron James and play 20 more years. You will be happy, you will get paid. Nobody's going to let you play unless you deliver some stats. So when you come in and if you're playing for 10 more years, LeBron James, and you're 63 and we wake up to LeBron James coming in with Lakers uniform and all that, and you still scored 3 points in 1 minute, you're good. You didn't ruin the game. Maybe you were a liability on defense, or maybe they let you in on bench time when the score was irrelevant for you to come out. That's fine. Maybe that's the case. You're still valuable. It doesn't really ruin the game itself. So you can keep veterans forever just for the sake of it. And they're not really getting more damage done if they're not playing much. They're not doing much damage to their bodies if they just sit on the bench and get some training and flights and all that. And they get paid and the fans want to see them. So it's not a big deal. But if you're a UFC fighter and you have this idea, oh, I might retire at some point, and I've been contemplating this like Volkanovski did when he lost to Makhachev. That's what he was saying. He was drinking and contemplating retirement, and people were also next to him were saying that. And yes, later he denied that he's thinking about it, and he repeated that last week and going into it a few weeks ago. Whatever, he still brought it up himself, and then that will follow him until he's actually retiring. So with basketball, very simple. You can keep playing forever. If the coach thinks you're valuable enough to be on the court and he lets you in, you are valuable enough to be on the court. Yeah. If you're put in a title fight, I think you're undervaluing yourself if you're talking about retirement. Both the fans are thinking, okay, if this guy wins a title and retires just like with John Jones, then it's like it just removes the intensity of the fight. And even if you win, just like John Jones or like Alex did now, it's still a problem. It's still an issue that the fans don't really know what's going to happen. And you have the second thought in your head, well, if shit goes south, I can just retire anyway and whatever. So that is, I would say it's quite a bit of a problem for as of late, mainly because of star retirement and the retirement talks at all times, with John Jones messing up a ton of fights and Poirier just retiring and talking about Gaethje mentioning if I don't get title shot, I'm going to retire. So everyone is using that to get some advantage, or more importantly to me, built-in excuse. Yeah, so if you lose the fight, you can say, well, I was considering retirement, and then you can retire and then you can come back. Or you say, well, I was planning to retire anyway. So if you were planning to retire anyway, why are you fighting for the title? We get it, payday. For a fan that watches the fight, it's really, really, really annoying. It's annoying to use it as a leverage. It's annoying to be not the key focus of the fight, of being how do I do my best, and that's it. That's the goal. Because there is a big difference between you aiming to be the best at the sport that you're doing, say fighting or basketball or football, whatever it is, tennis you're playing. That's one goal. That takes a lot. That takes everything out of you. And retiring, then you're just done. One requires everything, the other requires nothing. And now you have these two conflicting goals going up and down all the time. So I don't really like that. I'm not a fan. It's super annoying when fighters do that. I don't want to hear it at all, ever. It also makes them feel like they're not committed to things, which is also annoying. We don't want not committed fighters. We want them to be committed 100% to the fight. They come in, they're going there to knock somebody out or submit someone and not lay down and retire afterwards. No offense, Derek Lewis. We want them committed. We want them 100% there. It makes fights less exciting, less intense. There's always a little thing in the backs of everyone's head. Oh yeah, but this guy might retire anyway. Oh, he's close to being submitted. Well, if he gives up and to the submission, did he just give up because he was about to retire anyway? Or that other guy is good? It also undermines the other fighter because he has to live like, oh yeah, I'm fighting an old man that's about to retire. That is quite a bit of a problem. So yeah, that's my take. I don't think fighters should talk about retirement. If they want to retire, they can get a bad fight, bad matchup, and just go on a high note of beating some unranked person and not ruin their legacy in that way, and don't undermine the fight game. That's what I think. But what do you guys think? Should fighters just keep on talking about retirement, bringing it up, and then have it? Because the problem isn't just the fighters bringing it up. The problem is that it will get carried over by the media no matter what, in all kinds of scenarios and interviews. So it will always be with them. The moment you start talking about it, it's going to haunt you. And then it builds in like, oh, retirement. Maybe we'll stay fighting for 3 years, but maybe not. Nobody knows. It's annoying. So I don't know what you guys think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But personally, I don't want to hear anyone about anyone's retirement until they're really done. And it's comes post-fight interview. That's fine by me, to be honest. So if you like these analysis and discussions, please subscribe, like the video, comment what you disagree with, and we'll take it from there. And I'll see you next time on Friday for the fight week analysis. So take care.